Welcome back. My name is Hui Pei. I'm the co-host of this teach-out session on connected and self-driving cars. Joining me today is Bryce Pills, a former law school faculty member, currently now the director of our tech transfer office. And he's also helping with the MCT working group on legal liability and insurance over the last 4 years. So Bryce, you have been working with our members on a regular basis, talking to our industrial members. So what are the issues, legal liability insurance issues, that really concern them and keep them awake during the night?
Right. Well, how long do we have? One of the really interesting things for any new technology is just how it really stretches the boundaries and tests some of the existing laws and regulations that we have. Mm-hmm. You saw it with the internet, you see it with 3D printing, and we're now seeing it with connected and automated vehicles. Mm-hmm. I think some of the main issues, or the questions that people have, one is, who's liable if there is a crash with cars and there aren't typical drivers? Currently, the driver is at fault in 94 or more % of crashes. And as you see the role and control of the driver diminish over time, as the technology more and more is in control, you're hopefully going to see fewer and fewer crashes. But of the crashes we have, it's more likely that most of the fault will be on the technology providers. So I just think there's a lot of questions from OEMs and suppliers and even insurance companies as to where exactly will that fault rest, and how can these companies price that potential liability into their business models and find ways to insure against it. Another big question people have relates to cybersecurity. There's been a lot of high publicity cybersecurity breaches, but most of those relate to the loss of confidential information. When you have a connected automated transportation system, if there is a third party that breaches the cybersecurity aspects of the system, you potentially don't just lose credit card information, you potentially have property damage and bodily injury. And that poses a whole new type of liability for these companies. And so I think that, of all the questions, is the one that probably concerns a lot of people the most, because the risk is new and very difficult to quantify. Like I said, the issues are vast, and there's so many different players in this perspective. We even have municipalities and government agencies that will be involved in deploying some of the infrastructure. And so I know they're looking at, are we liable if we deploy a signal on a corner that doesn't function properly, and how can they kind of anticipate that risk and try to avoid it as best as possible.
So Bryce, you have been helping us to recruit a few law firms, working with the car companies and the technology companies, and they are working on a few projects trying to publish white papers. What are the examples of the white topic research topics, and what are examples of what they learn?
Right. Well, first, more generally, one of the really interesting things about this space is just how interested so many people are in being involved. And very early on with our working group at MCity, law firms were approaching us saying that they wanted to get involved, they wanted to find a way to help. And one of the ways we found for them to help was to help us with our research projects. Like I said, there's all these questions that are coming up about laws and regulations and insurance, and we have law firms both locally and around the globe with very deep expertise in these issues, or the desire to develop expertise in these issues. And so they've partnered with us to take on some of these projects. So early on, we had law firms that have historical practices in the automotive industry looking at who's liable if you have a car that's both controlled by a human driver and by technology. There's this shared control and the passing back and forth of the control. How will that liability regime work? People looked at the insurance industry and how the insurance model, which historically has been based around driver fault, how will that change as the technology is more and more involved? They've looked at privacy and data regulations. We've had people look at intellectual property questions, as we've seen, a lot of patents in the space of automated vehicles, and how the intellectual property landscape is going to play out. We've had someone do a very interesting study on consumer sentiment around liability on automated vehicles and the use of data to figure out fault. More recently, we've had people look at the regulations from the National Highway Transportation Safety Association and federal agencies that govern the safety standards in vehicles. And then a more recent project also looks at ways to mitigate all this liability. Can you do it through contracts? What other steps can technology providers apply to avoid some of the potential liability? The issues just keep coming up. One of the cool things through this dialogue, both with our members and law firms, is we're hearing what they're thinking about. And so what we try to do is listen to the people on the ground, kind of in the trenches, see what questions they have. And once we've heard that question enough, then we go out and try to find an expert to address that question.
Great. Also, M-City has been deploying this driverless shuttles on University of Michigan campus.
Right.
So, of course, within the legal liability insurance working group, there must be a lot of discussions. So what are the some of the issues related to deploying driverless shuttles on a campus or on public roads?
Right. Well, I think one of the unique things about Michigan and M-City is we're not just addressing hypotheticals, we're actually doing things. And as you know, there's no better way to learn something than to dive in and do it. And I think that's one of the great things about the shuttle deployment is, we're one of the few entities around the globe that have deployed a driverless transportation system. And we have a fantastic general counsel's office here at the university. We have fantastic expertise at M-City that have looked at the variety of issues. I think one of the interesting things there is the overlapping layers of regulations around the deployment of any vehicle. You're going to have regulations at the city level, the state level, and the federal level. And our general counsel's office in M-City had to navigate all of those in order to get permission to deploy this shuttle. After that, it's really just seeing how people react to it and learning from that as we go.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for the insight, and also thank you for being a part of the very exciting M-City project. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to the continued discussion on the discussion forum.